You are listening to 91.3 FM KUWS, a joint service of Wisconsin Public Radio and the University of Wisconsin-Superior. My name is Ann Dugan. I am the curator here at the University of Wisconsin-Superior Kruk Gallery, and I have the pleasure of sitting with Robb Quisling and Jonathan Thunder. These two artists are the artists that are part of the new exhibition in the Kruk Gallery entitled Loaded that opened on October 17th and runs through January. Gallery hours are Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. It's open to the public. Everyone is excited and welcome to come. And I'm here today to chat about the show. So we're going to start it off and talk with Robb and Jonathan about their exhibition. I think just to set the scene a little bit, you two are established artists in your own right. You've been working as artists in the community, and when I say community, that can be local, but also national, international. And you are successful in and of your own right. This is an exhibition that features both of your bodies of work, but it's really also about the connection between the two of you. Can you talk about when you first met each other and how that relationship started and how it's continuing on?
Yeah, thanks, Annie. Well, I guess Robb and I were introduced by a mutual friend, and at the time, I was going to a lot of recovery groups, recovery group meetings, and really just trying to wrap my brain around, like a lot of different approaches to self-improvement and healthy mind, spirit, and body type of activity. And one of the luckiest things that happened was I met another artist who is of about the same temperament and same, I guess, wit and sensibility, and just likes coffee as much as I do, and that was Robb. So we've been hanging out ever since. Just started with a studio visit where we just kind of like awkwardly talked about what kind of stuff we like to do, and as they say, the rest is history.
How long has your artistic friendship been going on?
Years. I suppose, 6 or 7 years?
Feels like maybe 60 or 70.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Nice. Well, so the title of the exhibition is Loaded, and it really is about about alcohol addiction, and to some degree that's the nucleus of the exhibition, but very much about the resilience, I think, of the two of you as artists, and the like I said, the connection between the two of you being a real important part of that resilience. And it is the second iteration of this exhibition. The first one was Aqua Vita, that was in the Kruk Gallery, but it was in the Kruk Gallery in 2020. So we didn't have a great attendance to that one. So in the 4 years since sort of doing this, can you tell me a little bit about Tell me a little bit about the theme. Tell me about how you each approached the theme, because the other thing that's, I think, tricky about a theme when you come up with a theme for an art exhibition, right, is that how do you walk the line between creating work that is just about the theme, but also your own work? Does that make sense? Like you want to sort of thread the needle between creating your own body of work, but then also sort of having these thoughts in the back of your head. So how do you make it sort of universal enough, but also sort of specific enough back to that theme? So I've asked a lot of questions in there, but you can pick whichever one you want.
Well, I think for me, the really important part is that I Jonathan and I have a weekly meeting every Wednesday, and we hang out and have coffee and talk about art and talk about our development. And so I think that I need to make work, and usually if it was in a more structured meeting, then you just hear how people negotiated the week, and it rings true, or you take or leave what you want. But with Jonathan and I, it's really beneficial that we're both artists, because really complicated ideas are difficult to articulate unless you can see them. So another artist that thinks in pictures, that is working in the same developmental vein, is critical to me. And so then what I'll do is I'll go away for a week, and then I come back and I say, this is what I was thinking about, and this is what my work is maybe looking like, and these are some of the tricks that are happening. And then Jonathan tells me, oh, this is what I was working on, and these are some of the tricks that I'm solving, riddles that, feed the process. So then week at a time, an inch at a time, it becomes more and better and more developed and more internalized, I guess. So that's my kind of take on it.
Yeah, and there was about a year or two there where we took a break from just studio visits and actually would meet at the racquetball court at the YMCA in downtown Duluth and just hammer it out with the racquetball and play really poorly, but also, through that physical activity and talking, in between, I guess, sets, pretty much accomplished the same thing. So that was we kind of approach it from all different angles, and like Rob was saying, we'll sort of hammer out a concept or something like that, and sometimes it's interesting because at the beginning of that conversation, a concept can look some certain way, but by the time we get done, sort of pushing it back and forth, it looks totally different, and it looks way better, than maybe like I could have thought of by myself. So, and I guess to answer your question about like how do you approach a topic, like alcoholism or alcohol, and draw from your own experience, but present it in a way where the general public is welcome to come and look and kind of take what they can take from it, and maybe make it a little bit of their own. Is I think, a lot of the way that Rob and I both work is conceptual and interpretive, so that space that we leave there for interpretation, I think that's the doorway, that's sort of the avenue, where the viewer is invited to come in and say, well, here's what I got from it.
Yeah. I see the exhibition starts with a piece that you did, Jonathan, and the English translation is Together. And I think the story of that piece to me encapsulates this thing that I'm trying to get at with the fact that to me it's, yes, the title is loaded, but it's more about the exhibition really is about the two of you and your friendship. And so can you talk a bit about that piece? It's the translation is Together.
Mamaway, an Ojibwe word that translated into English means together, like we are together. And together, to me, has always been a recipe for successful personal development, personal growth. Like if you have somebody that can kind of like you can call a friend and partner. So I wanted to make a piece that ultimately is about, at least two coming together, right? And I've created this series of birch bark containers, which is something that you would see around the Midwest widely at like art fairs and powwows, being sold by craftspeople. And I thought it was just a really just kind of like good way to say, all right, here are these 2 containers, and you can put in them what you want, and you'll get out of them what you put into them. So yeah, the word together, that for me has been an important part of my personal recovery and my personal growth since sobering up in October of 2013. I remember, I was kind of stubborn, and I've always, still am a creature of solitude, being a studio artist, right? But I figured out that, if I just do it my way, I'll be able to, like, stay sober, but that never really it wasn't working at the time. It just seemed like when I got together with other people who had, the similar goal of just living a good life, that's when success, successfully having a good day-to-day started to happen. So that's where that concept together comes from.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Robb, I want to talk a little bit about sort of your approach to this exhibition. I think I was really impressed with the bird's eye view that you took of it, as well as the attention to detail on each and every piece. And can you walk us through a little bit, because you really had a clear idea too, with not only the works that you made, but also how they flowed through the space and the story that they told together, and the story that they told as a body of work. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Certainly, yeah. I had this idea that starting where I'm in love with this liquid is more fun. So I started there, and all the kinds of things that go along with that were, it's bigger than life, it's a little sexy and kind of slippery looking and candy-like, and almost better than it is. And so I wanted them large and colorful, and I knew that I was going to work through the progression, so this repetition of this object over and over again, and diminish like it does. It's not a celebration anymore, now it's every day, and I found it really difficult to bring myself to make them colorless in the end and a little bit rougher. And so I found that's where I was going, and it finally ends with these paper bags that hold liquor, and they're called evidence bags, and they have this they retain the shape of the alcohol even when it's gone, just like we do. There's an injury that doesn't go away, you're in the shape of that forever. So I thought that was a good way to describe what that looked like. Home elements and things that you'd find in the home, it just becomes regular. So it moves from, delightful to normal to worse.
So I know you as a printmaker, and in this exhibition, not only I know you as a printmaker, but also always having something physical, like you have this understanding of art in a transmedia form, right? You always have something physical or sculptural, as well as printmaking, and now painting, which is, can you talk a little bit about, I want to get into the swings in the back room and the sculptural elements of your work, but for this exhibition, you've done painting before, but you really did painting with this one. Do you think in a medium specific way, or do you think in like, how do I get this medium to bend towards that larger vision? So either talk about that or talk about painting.
Well, I think that it's exciting for me to think about painting, because my joints don't work as well as they did, and it's hard to cut wood and linoleum for prints. But I thought that the idea of painting was really, it paralleled the idea of recovery, because Jonathan is a painter, and I need to be able to speak his language in order to make these meetings meaningful. And also, it was a risk that I was willing to take because I wasn't by myself. I wasn't alone. I could say, all right, I want to see you paint. I want to see what this looks like. And one day, actually, he just said, it's like this. And he poured out a little paint and then put a brush in it and put it on his canvas. And he said, like this. And it was just like, okay, I'm sold. It's over now. I'm doing that now. So that was really exciting. And it's something that I would never have tried, I suppose, unless I had good encouragement and knew that we were going in the same direction together at the same time. As far as those physical aspects of the swings, I knew that it was something that I needed to just say, well, what are the ingredients involved in making something look like it's come into your life? And so they are just chunks of what a house is. They're swings that are made out of mattress material and paneling and carpeting and stuff like that. And if you feel like you live in a alcoholic atmosphere or a house that's made that way, then I want people to accidentally bump into one and know, oh, it's like a maze. You got to be careful how you move. It's become part of you. It's almost that the disease finds its way into the atmosphere.
Yeah. It's interesting to listen to you talk about painting and sort of in relationship to this idea of like first you encounter alcohol as this like liquid that's really enticing, and it, you know, in hearing you talk about painting, it's like, oh, you know, it's this other liquid that has changed your life, but maybe like you know in mirroring, right, in the reverse perhaps.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of painting, I want to get to your enormous piece, Jonathan. How did you come to work so big? So I'm talking about the really large Basil's Dream. Can you talk about the genesis of that and maybe a little bit more about it?
Yeah, Basil's Dream is a 15 by 7 foot canvas that was rolled up in the corner of my studio probably for over a year. I would say it was a gift, and I had been meaning to use it. So I went to cut off a piece of it, and I rolled out a little chunk of it, and I heard my friend of mine who would always encourage me to paint larger, I heard his voice say, "Paint a big one, John." So I just gave that roll a kick, and it spread out all the way across my studio floor, all 15 feet of it, and I said, you know what, that looks like a lot of fun. And I like to work fairly panoramic, you know, on just I guess in general, I think that one-to-one kind of like viewer experience is exciting for me, and it's been a part of my practice since my painting instructor at my first college in Santa Fe, who was known for painting large paintings, you know, sort of. That appealed to me, you know, right from the beginning. So, yeah, that piece, I was excited to get it up on the wall and just stapled it up to the wall. And I had done some murals recently, which made, you know, working at that scale pretty intuitive for me, which is generally, you know, a 6 by 4 foot canvas is pretty good size, you know, but when you're talking about 15 by 7, you're sort of venturing into mural country. So I did that process, you know, I made a little sketch, and then I loaded that up into a tiny little projector and projected that sketch onto the canvas, and at that point I just had to fill it in. But that piece, you know, that piece is it's a vignette, and a vignette is common in my work because I went to school for film, and I think in stories and scenes and characters. And in my mind, it was an old kind of sketchy saloon or bar on the pier of Old Canal Park, back when it was basically just, I don't know, like a junk heap. And that bar was called the Mishabiju, which is an Ojibwe character that is a legend that is said to be a protector of the lake. And I've done a series of that recently. So that's kind of where that started. But then I wanted to occupy this bar scene with characters that not only stem from my understanding, I guess, of local legends here in the Twin Ports, from Anishinaabe storytelling, but also add a writer who, had a huge part in my development as a young man when I started to sort of waver and get into the pitfalls of, like meeting other teenagers who were interested in drinking and smoking weed and, whatever other drugs would come down the line. And one day my dad said, well, you're going to stay home for a little while. You're grounded. And I said, what am I going to do? Being a little teenager with an attitude. He threw a Basil Johnston book, down in front of me. And it was called Ojibwe Ceremonies. And he said, well, why don't you read that? Why don't you learn a little bit about that? So that's what I did. And I remember reading these vivid, really well kind of rendered stories that were so immersive and just seemed like it would be so hard to make those stories up. It was inspiring. And I hadn't seen, a lot of light given to Basil Johnston by painters. So it was exciting for me to add him to that. And compare and contrast the bar scene, that was also familiar to most of my life, to some elements that are part of my new life, like my new understanding of what it means to have an identity and be healthy and focus on my creativity.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You have both the largest piece and also then the smallest piece in the exhibition.
Right.
There's this really sweet, I think it's 6 inches by 6 inches. What is it to go between like working really small and working really big? Like, do you see a difference besides just like amount of materials or?
Yeah, probably a couple zeros at the art store, but other than that, painting small has never been easy for me, and I wanted to push myself, kind of like Robb pushed himself to, venture into painting. I thought, I'll make a series of paintings, that are just kind of bite-sized, so like 12 by 12, that neighborhood. And it was really good for me because I like painting big because it's physical, it's like there's more activity involved. You can use larger brushes. The mistake, is almost non-existent at that scale. But when you start getting into those little 12 by 12 inch canvases, it just seems like there's no physical sort of approach to it. You just have to think about what you want to paint and then figure out a way to use medium to small brushes to make that look how you want it to look, which a lot of painters are really good at, but that's one of my weak points. So it was a good process for me. I think throughout this process, I've become a lot more comfortable with working at that scale. I guess to think about learning new behaviors, like that was something that I kind of like really enjoyed learning, and I'm happy that I did it because it always felt like a weakness, and now I have some little 8 by 10 canvases in the studio that I'm really enjoying kind of working on right now.
So this, to that point, where are you both headed next? I mean, this is sort of I think this is maybe specifically to Robb to some degree because we've talked about the two of us on you have this theme for an exhibition. It's all you think about. It's like all you're focused on, and like you go, and it's like you ride this high, and then it's over, and where do you go next? I mean, I think you're going to keep meeting with Jonathan on Wednesdays, so that's a huge piece. But are there threads in this exhibition that you want to keep pulling on, and that could be either ideas, it could be mediums, it could be, this is the itch that I still need to kind of get to the bottom of, or I hear Jonathan sort of saying that working small and like working out those ideas is maybe the direction, or not the direction, but something to keep going on. How about you, Rob?
Yeah, I have I was watching out for that because I know that there's a certain amount of crash that happens afterwards, and you're right. I do have some safeguards in place. I'm going to keep on going over to Jonathan's studio every Wednesday. That's going to help a lot. But also that there are almost everything that attracts my attention has something to do with growth. And so like what I'll usually do is something will attract my attention and I just drag that object around forever and ever. And so I have these blood pressure valves that I have been carrying around in my bag that are kind of waiting for their turn. But still, when I, start to make them into an image or compose those things, I'm going to go over to Jonathan and I'm going to say, this valve is like, it's about pressure, or it's about, how do we fit that into something that's valuable to us for recovery? What's pressure all about? So it'll, no matter what I do, I know those things are waiting to be painted now, but I'm going to still paint. I'm going to still take the momentum that I have and keep moving. So, and I've also told Jonathan, I'm going to be weird and crabby for a little while and you need some help. So, yeah, I'm totally in safe hands for sure. Yeah.
Good. That's good to hear. You had a beautiful, when you were dropping off all of the artwork, but, and hanging up the Basil's Dream piece, Jonathan, you told me, that it was kind of a homecoming for the large canvas and for you in the Kruk Gallery. And I don't know if you'd be willing to share, so you showed in the Kruk Gallery in 2020, but then before that, it was 2008 that you had artwork in the Kruk. And can you tell that story? Because I think it's a really special one to lay some groundwork for the work that we're seeing.
Yeah, that is a bit of a full circle kind of story. I had been coming to the Kruk Gallery for these group exhibits that I was usually somebody who would just submit a painting or two, and then they would have like a featured artist. And one year, that artist was Joe Gieshik. And, I was pretty fresh out of college and still not really all that comfortable about talking about my paintings, even though that was part of, I had some exhibits where that was what I was asked to do, but I wasn't ever all that comfortable, and I think it's safe to say that I never am comfortable talking in front of a group of people. But I watched Joe Gieshik stand there, in front of a crowded Kruk Gallery, and like you said, this I think was in 2008. And I was standing in the back, row by my painting, listening to him be so truthful, about his adventures in having a rough time and then finding recovery, and the details, that he, the honesty that he showed there in front of that crowd and the bravery made me nervous, for him, because I wasn't used to that kind of open, honest dialogue about what it looked like to be an artist, and then to present artwork, and then to stand in front of the audience and say, like what your personal demons have been and what led you to make Joe Gieshik's work is very spiritual and serene, and that's a part of recovery, is finding that serenity, and spirituality for those who are interested in that. For me, that's been the case. So it was great to think about coming to do this show, about alcohol and sobriety, me and Robb's sobriety, and then look back at the sweaty younger me, and think about like what that experience was like and what it's going to be like, today, giving the brief artist talk on my recovery. Because in 2008, I probably left the gallery and went to the whatever local bar was and had a wild night and woke up kind of sick and drove back to the Twin Cities. But today I'll probably go, do some home cooking and get to bed by 11 p.m.
That's beautiful. Well, I certainly want to let you both talk about anything that I haven't asked about. But I also want to end with what you think or why you think art, because certainly it's the connection between the two of you that has been part of this resilience, but it's also art. And I'm wondering, what is that and how's that available? It's certainly something that is available to all of humanity, but why is it, what is it about that can circumnavigate those really powerful neurons in our brain telling us to, addiction is a something going on in our brain. How does art short circuit that or get beyond that?
Jonathan was telling me just the other day that how he was noticing that there are some similarities. We'll sometimes lie about what we're doing, like, I'm
making art on the side,
some sort of excuse to do it, dumping tons of resources that we really don't have into making things that are rather selfish. But in the positive vein, in its better way, I think for me that alcoholic thinking, or sometimes some of the symptoms of being an addicted person are like this chatter, or cyclical thoughts, or a lot of background noise. And I think that art will slow that down, and instead of just continually churning the channel in my brain, ding, 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 from one thing to the next, it will slow me down and say, well, it's time to, this concept deserves a beginning, middle, and end, and I can revisit that concept every time I touch my work, and it's long, takes a really long time so that it gets this full, I can digest a thing so that when I'm done, I can share it with somebody and say, this is what I mean, instead of just jumping from one topic to another, or it quiets that. It's a good solution. It really does help. It's soothing.
Yeah, I would say that's true for me too. I mean, going all the way back to my teenage years, when you start meeting people where your option is to go out and probably maybe get in trouble in one form or another. There were times when I would stay home and just sit with my sketchbook, because that was, to me, it seemed, even in those days, when I didn't know that's what was happening, that was a way for me to kind of hammer things out and weed through that teenage angst. And now it's grown man angst. And, on whatever level that is, that I'm expressing myself, whether it's interpretive, surrealistic, or storytelling, it does help. It helps to keep me on track. It's the only job I've ever showed up for consistently. I've been fired over and over again, and somehow now I'm able to just work in the arts. So maybe that's because it's the only thing that's kept me healthy enough to, show up for work, which is, working in the arts. And every time I tried to work for somebody else, like making phone calls or pushing brooms or doing roofs, or answering phones, I just melted. So it's very good, on two levels. It's a good, fun career that I enjoy. But it also is a tool, in my personal life that, like Rob said, there's like a lot of obsession that happens for me where if I should be thinking about, this bill that I need to pay, my brain will start going, well, you could go and do some sketching right now. Wouldn't that be better? So, yeah, it kind of has its own form of addiction. And I am a workaholic, in the truest sense of that term when it comes to making art, thinking about art, and just developing, because it's my language. It's the only language that's ever really worked for me. Music, writing, television, painting, sculpture, installations. That makes sense.
That's lovely. Well, I hope everyone comes and sees the work in person at the Kruk Gallery and makes those connections with you through looking and the power of sharing that visual understanding and that visual language that it's there for everyone to see. So Loaded is at the Kruk Gallery at the University of Wisconsin Superior in the Holden Fine Arts Center. Gallery hours are Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. I'm Annie Dugan, and I want to thank Robb Quisling and Jonathan Thunder for being here and talking with us today. And thank you all for listening, and enjoy the show, folks. You're listening to 91.3 FM KUWS, a joint service of Wisconsin Public Radio and the University of Wisconsin Superior.